What is up, guys? Alex from Lakey Wargames here, and welcome to today's Nighthaunt Tactics. Today we're going to be jumping in, having a look at the spell laws, and seeing what kind of magical support we can use to boost our ghosts. Alrighty guys, so before we jump into the spell lore itself and start digging into what makes which spells good, I just wanted to, as always, thank everybody who submitted their photos for these videos. If you guys aren't familiar with the way this works, I also admin in the Nighthaunt fan Facebook group. I'll link down below. And what I do is I ask every time I make one of these videos, I post up in the Facebook group, I pin it to the top, and I ask for people to put pictures of their finished Nighthaunt models into the comments section below. If they wish to, it's completely voluntary, and then what I do is I save all those photos into a folder, and I use them to display in these tactics videos which you see. So if you wish to take part in any of those, it's never too late. Just join with the link below if you're not already in the Facebook group. Leave the pictures as comments to the post, and I will be able to get through them. But as always, I'd just like to say a big thank you to everybody who submits their photos, because without you guys and your awesome hobby work and volunteering them for myself to be able to use in these videos, then these videos would look very boring without your amazing miniatures next to them. So thank you very much. So today's topic is the Nighthaunt spell lore, and we're going to be diving in and seeing which of the spells are worth taking and which of the spells aren't worth casting. So with our Nighthaunt spell lore, we have 6 spells to choose from. Now, when taking the Nighthaunt army, if Nagash is part of your army, he knows all of these spells in addition to everything else he already knows. And if you're taking any other heroes, including unique heroes, then they may know one of these spells in addition to what they already know on their scroll. One of my favourite things about the Nighthaunt spell lore is the fact it's very versatile. We've got 6 spells and they all seem to do very different things, which can be a bit of a kicker because Nighthaunt armies in this newer book are generally more expensive than they were in the older tome, and it's always a big deal about which heroes you bring to the fight, and not all of them are very well versed in the art of casting spells, if not being a spellcaster at all. So having that diverse pool of spells is really great because it gives you lots of options, which we're just about to go through. But at the same time, you have to think, when it comes to this spell lore, which spells are actually going to benefit you the most. Because it's great having a tool, at disposal for every job that you might need. But the fact that we can only probably bring 2 or 3 of these at a time, you really have to choose which ones you're going to take with you and which ones you're going to leave behind. So, with that in mind, let's jump on in with our first spell of the 6, and that is Soul Cage. So, Soul Cage is a rather straightforward spell. It has a casting value of 7 and a range of 12. If it's successfully cast, you pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. The Strike Last effect applies to that unit until the end of the turn. Now, a couple of great things about Soul Cage is the fact that it's just within range of 12 and not wholly within range of 12. So you are able just to tag one person in a big enemy blob of, say, 20-30 guys, and you can give that entire enemy unit Strike Last. Now, the Strike Last effect really comes into its own sort of in that mid to late game when you're controlling your opponent's units in multiple groups, because what you can do with Soul Cage is combine it really nicely with the Wave of Terror, which is from our Allegiance abilities in the Battle Traits section. So the combination with Soul Cage comes that you cast Soul Cage onto a unit, you give them Strike Last, you charge into a different unit, and if you get that Petrify off, then you can put Strike Last onto the unit that you've charged in, and if you manage to sneaky charge it to the point where you can tag both units, both the one that you Soul Caged and the one that you charged in to Petrify, then both those units are Strike Last and you can get all your attacks in. If you charge multiple units into both those units at the same time, then you're going to be able to get all of your attacks in while both those units are clogged down with the Strike Last effect, meaning you can deal all of your damage to them, hopefully wipe them out before they get to deal it back to you, as other units in their armies will have to fight before, and everything that's not striking last will swing first. The other thing to note with Soul Cage is it does suffer slightly from the drawback that we have on the Wave of Terror table, and that is that spell only lasts until the end of that turn. So you're going to cast Soul Cage, you're going to slow all the enemy down, charge in, do the damage you need to do before they get to strike, but if you don't wipe that unit and they survive, they're going to hit you back at the end of the turn, and if it goes into your opponent's turn, then they are no longer hit with that strike last effect. So you really have to try and maximize in the charges when you've soul caged an enemy unit to try and get all the damage in that you want to get in before the turn finishes. Next up on our list is the spell Spirit Drain. Now, Spirit Drain is a spell that has a casting value of 7 again, has a range of 18, and if successfully cast, you pick one enemy unit within range, visible to the caster, you roll a number of dice equal to the number of models in the target unit, and for each 6 they suffer a mortal wound. This one's nice and straightforward, there's not too many tricks or tactics to pull off with this one. It's just simply a roll a dice, and for every 6 you deal a mortal wound. Obviously a spell like this is better off against bigger units, because the bigger the enemy unit is, the more dice you're going to be rolling, the more chances you are of getting a 6. That said, 1 in every 6 for a mortal wound, taking up a spell slot, is quite not your most favourable odds. You got to think if you get 1 in every 6, every 20 guys, you're probably going to kill about 3 or deal 3 mortal wounds. That's if they don't have any mortal wound save of some sort. But yeah, it's not very great odds. For a spell on the casting value of 7 as well, one thing with the Nighthaunt book is we do suffer, outside of Reikenor and Nagash himself, is bonuses to cast and getting off spells. So 7, even though it's an average on 2 dice, once you factor in how powerful other armies are with their dispelling or magic in their own right, 7 can be quite a hit or miss number for us in Nighthaunt. So if you know you're playing against big hordes a lot, then Spirit Drain might be grateful for you, but it is one of those where it's a bit hit or miss. Next up on our list, and spell number 3, is Lifestealer. Lifestealer is a spell that has a casting value of 7 and a range of 12. If it's successfully cast, you pick one enemy unit within range and visible to the caster. The target suffers D3 mortal wounds, and you get to heal 1 wound allocated to the caster for each mortal wound that was allocated and not negated by this spell. So, nice simple one again. The nice thing about this is, again, it's not a wholly within spell, so you can just tag someone within 12, and dealing the mortal wounds is always nice. Being able to heal back heroes is a nice trick within this book, because it's something that we lost quite a lot of. With our healing, mainly from the Guardian of Souls and from the Spirit Torment, they all heal summonable units. Now, some of our bigger characters, like Lady O, she has an ability to be able to heal herself, but all the other characters in this book that might become spellcasters don't really have ways to heal themselves back up. So someone like Reikenor, this spell really appeals to, because Reikenor with his corpse candles can wound himself to boost his casting values, and being able to cast a spell that then heals you is good, because if you're hurting yourself, you don't want to lower yourself to the point where you end up killing yourself. So having Lifestealer on someone like Reikenor can be really good, boosting up your values by dealing damage yourself, and then having a spell in your back pocket to heal you back is great. The only problem with Reikenor in that sense is Reikenor is only a 1-cast wizard, so he can't do that to boost up his casting, cast a big spell that turn, and then be able to use Lifestealer at the same time to heal himself. So it does mean, say if you had something like a Purple Sun in your list with a really big casting value, you use Reikenor, you power out your Purple Sun 1 turn, then you have to keep Reikenor alive until the following turn, any other damage he might additionally sustain, and then go in with the Lifestealer and be able to heal him back up. I would say outside of Reikenor, the best way to get use out of Lifestealer would be on Nagash himself. Nagash has a spell on his own scroll that gives him the ability to heal, and that is the Soul Stealer spell. So he can have a way to double heal himself if you use Soul Stealer, and then you also used the Lifestealer spell, and it's 2 different spells that are going to heal him up different wounds. So he has the maximum of 16 to heal, benefit from it most. But other than that, all of our smaller heroes are very low wounds. You know, we're around about that 5 to 6 wounds. So when someone really comes for your heroes and tries to target them, most of the time they are going to one-shot your hero. But again, it is handy to have on someone like a Reikenor, and it's especially handy on Nagash because he already knows it. You don't have to give up any spells to know it. Now, we're on to the second half of the spell lore, and these are some of my personal favourites. These are the ones I like to take most often, and they all have lower casting values, so it's really nice to be able to get them off on those small heroes. As we spoke, outside of Reikenor, Nighthaunt don't really have that innate ability to cast their own spell casting, so having the lower casting value just in general is great to have. So we're going to start off with the next spell, and that is Seal of Shaish. This spell has a casting value of 5 and a range of 12. If it's successfully cast, you pick one friendly Nighthaunt unit wholly within range and visible to the caster. That unit has a 5+ ward save until your next hero phase. Now, this is a fantastic spell in my opinion. We all know about the Discorporate from the battle traits, so being able to use a command point and you receive a ward of 5+ instead of 6+. Discorporate only lasts until the end of that phase, so if you used it in a combat phase, by the end of the combat phase Discorporate is gone. If you used it in the shooting phase because you were getting shot at and you wanted the boosted ward save, it's gone at the end of that shooting phase. The amazing thing about Seal of Shaish is it lasts until your next hero phase. So your wizard is going to cast this out onto a unit. Say you've got a unit of Bladegeist Revenants, you put this spell on them, now your Bladegeist Revenants have their 4+ ethereal unrendable save, and now they have a 5+ ward save bolted on top of them as well, and it lasts until your next hero phase. So if you end up getting double turned, then that 5+ ward save sticks, and this becomes even more valuable if you cast it on a bigger horde type unit. As I spoke about just before we got into the nitty gritty of this spell, having the lower casting value of a 5 is absolutely fantastic because it means there's more chance of getting this spell off in the first place. The only downside to Seal, in my opinion, is the fact that it has to be wholly within that 12-inch bubble, so your hero is pretty much going to have to be hugging the unit that it wants to cast it on, and especially if that's a bigger unit. Say you've got something like 20 Grimghast Reapers, then being able to have them all wholly within 12 inches to get that spell off in your hero phase means that you have to be quite tight to them. One thing that you can do with that in mind though is say you're going first, then you can deploy yourself really close in with that bigger unit. You cast Seal on them, and like I said, it will last until your next hero phase. So then say your big unit of Grimghast Reapers or whoever you've cast this on can go off, do their thing, and that 5+ bubble will stay with them until your next hero phase. The next spell on this list is Shade Mist, and this is probably my personal favourite of all 6, and the one that your enemy is going to hate the most. Shade Mist is a spell that has a casting value of 6 and a range of 12. If successfully cast, pick one friendly Nighthaunt unit wholly within range and visible to the caster. You subtract 1 from wound rolls that target that unit till your next hero phase. So this has very similar conditions to the Seal of Shaish. The fact that it lasts until your next hero phase means that you can cast it, you don't have to worry about it running off on you. One of the downsides to our Wave of Terror table is we get such fantastic buffs on the turn that we charge in and we trigger those, but again they only last until the end of the phase. So things like Seal of Shaish and Shade Mist here that last until our next hero phase, it proceeds to go on through the enemy's turn and is absolutely huge. Also, a lot of things in this game give benefits to hit, so lots of pluses to hit, using things like all-out attack or just heroes generally buffing things, but buffing people's wound rolls is something that's more of a rarity, so being able to subtract 1 from wound rolls is really, really valuable. Once you start to factor in the fact that you can use things, if you're on the offensive, you cast Shade Mist, again let's use that 20-man Grimghast Reaper block, you cast Shade Mist onto your Grimghast Reapers, so they are now -1 to be wounded, then they go off, they charge something. Shriek is the easiest and most common thing to get on our Wave of Terror, because you only need the 4+ to charge, and that is subtracting 1 from the enemy's hit rolls for their attacks. Of course that one only lasts till the end of the phase, but for that turn that you charge in, you are now -1 to be hit and you're -1 to be wounded. You could then, if you really wanted to, if you had another spellcaster, you could put Seal on them as well, or if things really hit the fan badly, you can use Discorporate. So now you've got Grimghast Reapers with a 4+ unrendable save that are -1 to be hit in combat, they're -1 to be wounded, they've got a 4+ unrendable save and that 5+ ward save, whether you used Seal or Discorporate. So Shade Mist is one of those absolutely fantastic defensive buffs that I think you just really, really love. It's really valuable, and having a casting value of 6, it's not the easiest thing in the world to cast, but it's also not the hardest thing in the world to cast. So really, really valuable spell, that one, and I always recommend a Shade Mist if possible. Moving on to our last spell of the list, and that is Spectral Tether. Now, Spectral Tether has a casting value of 4. If it's successfully cast, you remove the caster from the battlefield, you set him up again on the battlefield more than 9 inches from all enemy units. The caster cannot move in the following phase. Now this is one of those great spells where it's sort of a situational one. but it really gets you out of a sticky situation. If your general is, say, a wizard, and you really need to get them out, say they're down to their last wound, then you can just bullet dodge them on out. This spell is great in combination with lists that have Alrich the Drowder in, and say you have like a Dreadblade Harrow in there. You also have, from the beginning of the game, you've got Vanishing Phantoms, where you can remove up to 3 Nighthaunt units from the table. So this one you can really pull off some tricks. Takes some getting used to and making sure you have it in the right situations, but Spectral Tether can just get you to where you need to go. If the rest of your army is teleporting around and doing all those sort of shenanigans, and you're trying to create those bubbles of jumping into your opponent's lines, then Spectral Tether is your go-to spell to be able to get you to catch up. For example, say you have the Guardian of Souls in your list, and your Vanishing Phantoms or Alrich teleporting a unit of Bladegeist Revenants or Grimghast Reapers, and you want your Guardian of Souls to be able to catch up to them, but you don't have the CP, or it's not turn 1 anymore, then you can use something like Spectral Tether to be able to get your Guardian of Souls up there with the teleported unit. So if Alrich teleports himself and that unit of Bladegeist Revenants to the other side of the table, you want your Guardian of Souls around to be able to give them that 12-inch +1 to wound bubble. Then Spectral Tether is the spell that you would use to cast on himself and be able to teleport him after those 2 units. Another nice thing to do with Spectral Tether is to put it on Lady O herself. One thing I really like to do is put Lady O with the Vanishing Phantom, so she disappears, she's not deployed on the table. Then you drop her down turn 1, so you can lift the veil, start dealing some damage, because it's a 12-inch reach on the veil. She comes down outside of 9. What you can do is drop her down. Say if you dropped her on the left hand side of the table, you hit a unit with the veil, you do your other tricks, whatever you might be running, and then all of a sudden the next turn you cast Spectral Tether, whoop, you teleport yourself over to the right hand side of the table, and then you can start doing it again as if you had Vanishing Phantoms for another turn. Spectral Tether also benefits from the fact it's the lowest casting value of them all. Casting value of 4 is really easy to get off, but again is probably one of the most situational ones of the bunch. So you really have to make sure that the other spells that you're not taking, in order to take Spectral Tether, you're really going to make use of that teleporting around. And to be honest, things like your Shade Mist, your Seal of Shaish, your Soul Cages will come more valuable for you more often throughout the battle than Spectral Tether. But Spectral Tether is one of those spells that when you need it and it's in your back pocket, you're going to be absolutely fantastic that you took it with you, because being able to just teleport yourself out of a dangerous situation, or pressure another objective, or just, pin enemy units in by moving a threat from one end of the table to the other, it can be really valuable in its own right, but you just have to make sure that you're playing into it. One thing to just note on Spectral Tether is that you have to be more than 9 inches away from the enemy when you teleport. So if you're using this on a combat hero, and it has to be the caster that casts it as well, so you either have to be a wizard or you have to have something like the tome to make you a wizard, and if you're putting that onto your combat hero, then you are going to be outside of 9 inches, so you are going to have to rely on those longer charges to get in. So that was my review and little sneak peek and tactics into some of the spell laws before we go into our unit specific guides. I hope you guys have found this helpful. Let me know in the comments down below which spells you value more than others, and which ones you always like to take, and which hero combination you will take them with. As always guys, thank you very much for watching, and stay safe. Happy wargaming. Psst. Hey you! Did you know that Lakey Wargames now has an official eBay store? You can buy yourself all kinds of pre-painted and new on sprue hobby goodness and support the channel at the same time. There's a link in the description below if you want to check it out. I'd greatly appreciate it, and it's a fantastic way to support the channel. Okay, see you in the next one.